archaeologist because he's not a trained archaeologist. He's like a hobbyist who like geeks out on archaeology. But this was like over 100 years ago, right? When it was kind of like the Wild Wild West here. And like nobody was checking people. Like this was full on like Tomb Raider mode, Indiana Jones, where you could just like pull up on an indigenous community and be like, yo, I'm going to take this stuff. This belongs in a museum somewhere. And so Hans Hornbostel was particularly problematic because he was he was an archaeology enthusiast, and he ended up serving in the U.S. military. And I think when he got out of the military, they contracted him, or he ended up coming back in basically as a spy. And so at that time, right, Saipan and the CNMI were under the control of the Germans. And so, an American soldier couldn't just pull up and be like, yo, I just want to check it out. And so they sent Hans Hornbostel to say, oh, I'm just here to check out these Chamorro artifacts. And what he was really doing was like taking photos and getting information for the U.S. military on what the Germans was up to over there in Saipan. And so a lot of the artifacts that he stole came from Saipan, some from Rota, and majority of it came from Guam. And so this guy stole like over 10,000 artifacts and hundreds of human remains. I mean, he even took latte stones, and I swear I heard that he took a galite. And the way he did this was that because he was a spy for the U.S. military agreed to transport everything that he collected over these years from Guam to Oahu so that he could donate it to the Bishop Museum. And that's how Bishop Museum ended up with all of this stuff. I get this a lot from a lot of like hardcore Chamorros who are like, yo, I hope Bishop Museum burns in hell. And I'm like, guys, I feel you. But we love those guys at Bishop, man. They're our friends. There's like a bunch of Native Hawaiians and like indigenous people that work at Bishop Museum now. And these poor people are like, oh my God, we feel so horrible that we work at this place that has like stolen your history. And we want to help, like whatever we can do to make this thing right. Like we're with you guys. And so I got to give props. I got to give props to the staff over at the Bishop Museum. Yes, it is an ugly history. Thousands of artifacts, human remains, the whole 9 yards. And, it was obviously exploited so that people could come pay admission to Bishop Museum and like, view all our stuff and like observe us like objects. And so the human remains came back to Guam back in 2000. But it was only just last year that we started to get some of the artifacts, including the latte, returned to Guam from the Bishop Museum. And the reason why I bring this up is because, that was at least my first go at it. The Bishop piece is old. There have been generations of people, Chamorros, who have pushed to have these items returned to Guam. That's the reason why the human remains came back, was because, there are a lot of leaders in Guam and community leaders from Guam, Chamorros, who were just very aggressive in engaging with the Bishop Museum. There's even a group that partnered with a Hawaiian nonprofit organization, and they filed a lawsuit against the Bishop Museum. Yeah, really, really cool history. And so, we ended up kind of picking up the torch and just trying to carry on this work by, these generations of people who came before us to try to bring these remains home, or the artifacts home. The remains had already come. And that work is still underway. But since then, there was a new discovery. I'm going to try my best to like retell this history. I was trying to get our curator, Dr. Michael Lujan Bevacqua, on the air today, but he is actually en route to Hawaii and Los Angeles because he's bringing more of the human remains home. He's also attending a museum training, and he will be offering Tsumoru language classes because I think Chetlu Fest is going on this week or weekend in San Diego. And so there's, if you are aware, there are more Tsamorus living in the continental U.S. than there are in Guam today. And so there's a significant amount of diaspora that, are still trying to maintain their cultural connections, perpetuate language and our cultural traditions. And so, there are a lot of cool Tsumoru gatherings happening outside of Guam. I gotta admit, I am guilty of not always attending these Chamorro gatherings when I was living in Hawaii. I think it's because when I was living in Hawaii, it was kind of, I moved to Hawaii when I graduated from high school, and I went to UH in Manoa. And I think I kind of viewed moving to Hawaii as like my escape. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in Guam. I got the classic experience like most people in Guam. You can't go to the supermarket without seeing like 17 aunties and 14 friends of the family, and it takes you an hour just to get bread, or it takes like an hour when it's time to leave the restaurant. You know what I mean? You do the long kiss goodnight with your family. You got to talk about all the things you didn't talk about in the last 4 hours in the restaurant. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot. When you say bye like 17 times, bye. Okay, that's it. KK. See you tomorrow. It's like, it's already tomorrow. So when I moved to Hawaii, it's kind of like, this is a cool thing to be a nobody. Like nobody knows me. I tell somebody my name and nobody's like, hey, don't you guys own the airport? I'm like, no, man. No, I don't even get free parking there. Jeez. I don't even get a discount. I can't even get into the lounge. I don't even have miles for that. And so I didn't always go to all of the Tsumoru gatherings, but I remember this one year, my pari was stationed there, and him and his wife and my godson were like, my godson was just a baby, but my pari and my mother were they wanted to go to, gosh, I don't even remember what it was. I want to say it was like Easter. Like the Tsumoros had like an Easter gathering. It was either that or Liberation, one of those. It was a big one though. And so I agreed to go, and they held it at Pearl Harbor. And so I was driving in. I didn't really know where I was going. And then I saw a truck that had a Guam Seal sticker on it. And I was like, oh, there's a Tsumoru right there. Like, I'm just going to follow this guy. I'm going to follow this Guam Seal. And then next thing you know, I saw like another Guam Seal and another Guam Seal and then a Chetlu sticker and then a Fuck Eye sticker. And I was just like, I think I'm in the right place. And then there was like hundreds of cars with like their Tsumoru sticker on it, their Guam flag sticker on it. And I was like, yeah, we definitely here. And we pulled out and everybody had bamboo Gojuri, their Fuck Eye shirt on, their crown shirt. And I was like, yep. We definitely made it to the right place. But man, I gotta say that the Tsumoru gatherings that I did go to, they are massive. Tsumoru's rep hard when they are not at home. I swear I only ever used to wear like the Guam shirts when I was not in Guam. When I'm in Guam, I'm like, you already know where I'm from, man. I'm gonna wear a different shirt. We're already in Guam. You know what I'm saying. But when I'm not in Guam, it's like everything that I asked my family to send me. You need anything? Send me a Guam shirt. Send me a Guam shirt. Send me a real big Sinai. Get me the one on Chief Kapua. I want that one. Oh man. But yeah, so we ended up having another. It was cool to work on the Hornbostel repatriation. For one, what I believe it has to do with the show and the work at the Commission on Decolonization is I think that anytime that an indigenous people is reclaiming what is rightfully theirs and bringing something home, especially something like this, right? Human remains or cultural artifacts, I think that this is a commitment. This is us showing that, these things are not just things. They're not just bones and they're not just shells or rocks. These are representation symbols of our culture, our identity, who we know ourselves to be. Um, and I think that that's a beautiful thing, right? Like anytime an indigenous community is going to say, like, yeah, we know that this is hard. This is hard work to do. We know that it's expensive work to do, but it's necessary work. We got to do this, right? I think that that's a great thing because what we're doing is that we're ensuring that our kids can learn from these things, right? We're ensuring that our kids have more than what we had. And I think that that in and of itself is an act of decolonization. And so after we were kind of resolved with the Bishop Museum and they made the commitment, yes, we agree to return all of these items. All we're doing now is just trying to figure out how do we get 10,000 items from Oahu to Guam. And so we've been bringing some of these items home, but we got to figure out like a mass exodus plan, right? Like how do we get everything crated and onto a container and then shipped all at once? And so in the meantime, we're bringing home as much as we can, every opportunity that we get. But I think that this is something that I believe is going to take really long, right? It's going to take us a while to get everything permanently returned home, and then from there we have to figure out how do we curate it and give our people an opportunity to see these things, right? They have a right to see them, they have a right to access them, learn from them, and that's the role of the museum. The museum is supposed to tell the story. And so even at a local level, let's say for example there's a military project and they discover Tuamotu artifacts when they're building, right? The first government organization on the site is the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. And what they do is they assess, they have, a team of archaeologists who assess whatever was found to determine, where is it from? Like even with human remains, right? We could discover skeletal remains and they may not be Tuamotu, right? There have been a number of occasions where we discovered, skeletal remains, thought that they were Tuamotu. Turns out they're from World War II. And so, when the SHPO's office comes in and they say, okay, yes, these are indeed Tuamotu remains. They're from this era. They do all of their testing. I'm not going to even try to get into the jargon and the rhetoric of what they do. I'm not going to pretend that I know what these guys are up to. But they do their archaeological assessment. They determine whether, these are remains from the Lati era or from World War II or what have you, right? And then once they get a chance to inspect, they build a record. They try to build out as much information around the item or the remains as much as they can. And then the items are transferred then with the information to the Guam Museum. This is everything except for human remains. Human remains, by law, they're supposed to go back into the site that they were found, and then you're supposed to build a monument. So if you ever go to pretty much any hotel in Tumon, almost every single one of them has what we call a naftan. A naftan is like a burial monument. And that's because, most hotels were built after 1980, and we had a law in place in 1980 that said if you find human remains, you have to, reinter them at the site that they were found in, and then you have to erect a monument. And so, if you go to, say, for example, what is the one down there? The Nico and Subaki and what's the other one? Loti. Those guys, their naftan is like right out there in the front. So when you're pulling into you're hanging the left to Subaki before you go down to Gun Beach, right when you pull in on your right hand side, right when you get into the driveway, they have their naftan is set up there, and they're one of the bigger ones. And a lot of it is because they discovered a significant amount of remains there. I'm sure you guys have seen some of like the viral videos of like the haunting at Nico. You ever seen that? It's pretty crazy. Like some worker goes down into like the bottom floor and like there's a door that's just opening and closing in the dark. Dude, I'm telling you, I'm convinced that there's something going on over there. I mean, you can't discover that many ancient Chamorro burials and be like, yeah, there's just no spirit here. Nah. I ask before I use that hot tub. I ask before I go down and swim at that beach. But yeah, so once the museum receives the items, the museum's job is to figure out how do we tell this story, right? How do we put these items out so that people can see them, but tell a story so that they know what they're looking at, right? It's not just like a bunch of stuff like, wow, look at all this cool stuff. Here are all these hooks. What are you trying to tell me here? It's important that when our people and even our visitors, when they see these items, that they get the context, right? They understand the history. Why do these things mean so much to us? And why are they more than just things? And so it's kind of an exciting element, right? I feel like that's the cool part is, being in the driver's seat on how we're going to tell this story. And so after we settled the agreement on Hornbostel, it wasn't too long after that ironically, it was our curator, Dr. Bavacqua's auntie. Her name is Fran Lujan. Miguet's auntie, Fran, is the curator of the Pacific Museum of Art in, I want to say San Diego, somewhere in California. I think it's San Diego. I might just be saying San Diego because most Chamorros are. I'm taking the high probability guess here. 2 out of 3 Chamorros living in California live in San Diego. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but I believe it is in San Diego. Anyhow, the curator of the Pacific Museum of Art in San Diego, Fran Lujan, somehow found out that there were human remains in storage at the the Museum of Natural History in New York City. I have no idea how she made this connection, but she figured out, she heard that heard a rumor that there were human remains there. And so she ended up writing to them, and somehow she made contact, talked to a few people who talked to a few more people. Next thing you know, she's making a request to visit them, and she wants to see the remains, which they surprisingly agreed to. And so when she saw them, she knew immediately that these are definitely Chamorro remains. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is because the practices back then were kind of disrespectful. Not kind of, they were very disrespectful. A lot of human remains from that time, and even objects, so, sling stones and whatnot, they would write information directly on the object. So the skulls, if you've seen any of the media coverage on, PDN, the Post, all the print media has photos online of these skulls that were returned to us. They all have inscriptions written on the side of the skull. And one of the interesting things that was written on it is the word Matua. And so for those of you who are not aware, ancient Chamorro people had a caste system, which was the Matua and the Manatsang, right? The upper and lower caste, ruling class and lower caste. And so, it was said that the Matua were they were the ones who lived near the shore. They were the only ones allowed to fish in the ocean. The Manatsang had to live inland, and they only, were able to harvest fish out of the rivers and, of course, farm. But, the class system in Chamorro society is complex. Like, some people believe that it wasn't necessarily like a, upper and lower class, but that it was more like the Manatsang were those who chose to not participate in society. And so if you're not going to live in a collective, then, you have to live elsewhere. You have to live in these other areas because the ocean is for everybody. Everybody wants to participate, and it's debatable, but nonetheless, there was a clear kind of separation right between these two groups, and so these skulls have the word Matua written, which Miguet, our curator, in our ceremony last week Friday, he described. Miguet did a fantastic job at our ceremony, a really beautiful ceremony, which I'll talk about in a second. But Miguet, he called it, "This is our Mes Chamorro mystery," in that we have to, the information that was given to us from the museum is pretty limited, and so that's part of the job of the the Guam Museum is to figure out, what other information can we find that we can share with our people to better understand, and learn from these historical items. And in this case, our ancestors' remains. And so anyway, we ended up bringing the SHPO into it. The State Historic Preservation Officer, Patrick Lujan, he engaged with, started to engage with the museum, the Natural History Museum in New York. And surprisingly, this engagement went really well, really smooth, and really fast. We only started this work just a few months ago. Gosh, I want to say maybe like the later part of last year or the middle of last year, the earliest. But it was just a few months. And it didn't take long for the museum board, to approve our request for repatriation. And next thing you know, we were off to the races. It was awesome. Like, Pat was calling me like, hey, I got a flight booked. I'm going to go out to New York and I'm going to retrieve our mañana. And so, you need to start moving and help to plan a ceremony, a receiving ceremony when they come back. And even for us, we were just scrambling like, oh my God, this is happening so quick. We got to put this whole ceremony together. We need people to help out. It was a lot to organize in a short amount of time, but it was an awesome problem to have, in the sense that, we were only stressed out because things were happening and the ancestors were coming home. So it was a super exciting thing, and it was, I got to say, like, on a personal note, it was really cool to, see these other connections that were being made, right? Like the museum agreed to do a ceremony, like an outgoing ceremony, to kind of, pay their respects, to honor them. They connected us with some of the Native American groups from that area. And so some of their practitioners came down to chant and, pay their respects and be there in solidarity with us. But, we were able to kind of connect with other Chamorros in the diaspora. We try to really target those that are living in the East Coast. It just so happens that my sister has been living in New York since I think 1998 or something like that. Yeah, she's officially been living in New York longer than she lived in Guam. It's crazy. But, she was super excited and was just like, how do I go? How do I do this? And so it was cool. We were just able to kind of send a list over. People, Chamorros were able to reach out to the museum and request to be included. And so a bunch of Chamorros ended up coming out to this ceremony, including my sister. Miguel's Auntie Fran was there. Who else was there? Pat Lujan, of course. Judge Johnny Gogo, he's a judge in California. He was part of the project to have this flag signed by World War II survivors. He was also accompanied by Manny Crisostomo, the famous photographer. Dr. Delisle, Tina Delisle, who is the mother of our lab manager at the repository. Who else was there? There's a woman, I can't remember her name, but there's a woman who actually works at the museum who I think she used to live here, but her dad used to work with my dad at the Environmental Protection Agency. Small world, and she's an employee over there. Yeah, so it was cool. A bunch of Chamorros came out. Indigenous groups came out to have this ceremony in New York. And, Manny Crisostomo was like the official photographer. A lot of great photos. You can find them all over Instagram. But they had a really beautiful ceremony there. And Pat ended up taking the ancestors and hand carrying them home. And so he got back I want to say he got back like last week, Tuesday, like Monday or Tuesday, something like that. And then we held the ceremony on Friday. So it was a super quick turnaround, but I got to say that I felt really blessed and just so grateful for all the people who came together to contribute and put this beautiful ceremony together. And it was packed. There had to be over 100 people there. And a lot of it was just kind of word of mouth. People, of course, the news was covering it, but the museum wasn't putting out any kind of promotion. We weren't like targeting people and inviting them. I mean, we invited a few people, but we couldn't we had to focus on doing the event, not on advertising it. And because the media was covering it, we felt pretty good that the word would get out and that people would come. And sure enough, we packed the theater. The lobby was packed when we were, blessing the remains. And, of course, we created opportunity for anyone who came to see the Mañana, spend some time with them, mourn, pay their respects, and, give an offering. And it was a really beautiful thing, I got to say. There were a whole bunch of cultural practitioners that came out. Our board member, Leonard Iriarty, who is also leads the group Ifan Alayan, he led our blessing. He's a board of trustees member for the Department of Tomorrow Affairs. Vince Regis, who is running our cultural arts program at the museum, also was there with his group for chant. And then Imat and Gumat was there. Members of Pipit and Tautatana were there. I'm sure I'm missing a few, but there are a lot of chanters who came, a lot of practitioners, and it was beautiful because, all the groups have their own Gumat, right? Their own thing. And they all kind of do their own thing in their own way. And a lot of times, the chant groups are kind of separated. But, when we did the Lati return ceremony and when we did this ceremony, it's an awesome thing because they all come together and everybody's super friendly to each other. And they were great. They're so beautiful. They just kind of sustained the chant. So Sina Leonard did his opening blessing. And then when the governor and lieutenant governor who led the offering, they went and made their offering. And then we just kind of made like a funeral line. And everybody was, just kind of lined up to go walk into the space where the ancestors were. We had a bunch of flowers available for people to just kind of take and make their offering. The groups just started chanting, and they just when one group would finish a chant, another group would come in and continue it, or a different chant, and they just kept on riding it, and it was so beautiful, and all these people were making their way into the space to make their give their offering and pay their respects, and people were just blowing the kulu constantly. The kulu just kept on going off. There's multiple kulu in there. Man, it was such an awesome moment, and I felt so grateful that people just genuinely wanted to connect, and they wanted to be there. They wanted to be involved. It was an awesome thing to see folks there in the space. Everybody was in their feels for some reason or another. A lot of people were in there, kind of getting teary, hugging each other. It was a really nice ceremony. And, I got to just thank anyone who came out and helped us put it together. I appreciate you. Oh, here's my correction. Thank you, team. Thanks, Byron. My team is listening. I just got the correction. Fran Lujan's museum is in Long Beach. So it's the museum, Pacific Museum of Art in Long Beach, California. And she is the curator. But yes, thanks to Fran Lujan, of course, our curator, Dr. Bavacqua, our State Historic Preservation Officer, Pat Lujan, the museum board, the Museum of Natural History in New York board, and all of our, members of our diaspora that went out to participate and send our ancestors off. I appreciate all of you doing this. Shout out to our viewers. We got a few viewers on our Instagram live. Loneliest Boy in the World says they are extensions of ourselves. I agree with that. Absolutely. They are absolutely extensions of ourselves. Thank you for the comment. If you are looking to tune in online, we're on the YouTube, Wave YouTube channel. We're also on the Guam COD Instagram Live. And of course, we're out there in Radio Land. So thanks to everybody tuned in and listening to the show. We're excited to be back with another block of political status conversation. We are coming up on the top of the hour real quick, but I am expecting former Congressman Dr. Robert Underwood to come through, and we wanted to try to dig into this, the implications of this conflict in Iran and what has been happening in Venezuela and how those things affect us here in Guam. I think a lot of times we're we're kind of disconnected because we're far away, right? And I think a lot of us tend to think that, well, it's all the way over on the other side of the world. What does it have to do with us? But we experience things that clearly have our impacts to us. I think right off the bat, I think every family that has a service member is kind of holding their breath, wondering, are our soldiers going to be deployed? But there are other factors, other aspects of our lives that are impacted. Gas is like the hot topic all day, every day right now. Everybody is, and people, I think rightfully, people are a little confused, right? Like, we're not even getting our oil from Iran or the Middle East. So, why are our gas prices so high? But, there's a lot of things at play here. And I think that's the important piece, right? Is how do we here in Guam connect the dots, and how do we make these connections to our political status and better understand, why we're affected by these things, but more importantly, what changes if we were to change our political status. And I would argue that Guam, with a sovereign status today, in the global situation that we find ourselves in, that we would be a lot better prepared to weather the storm on something like gas prices if we had a sovereign status. And every status is different, right? Obviously, we would have a different course of action if we were independent, a different one if we were freely associated, and even more different if we were fully incorporated as a state. But even states right now are not immune to the rising gas prices. Like, I just heard Senator Lujan was on the air with Patty earlier, and they were talking about this request for a temporary waiver of the Jones Act to provide some relief in gas prices, right? Decrease the cost of shipping so that the gas prices could be a little bit lower. But he mentioned on the air that even Texas is requesting a waiver to help bring their gas prices down. But they're not even they're getting their oil from Texas, like from in-state, and so states are affected in a different way. But nonetheless, they are also impacted, right? They're just a lot more equipped as sovereign nations within, or sovereign states within the union, to navigate this. So anyhow, a lot to talk about. I just got an update that former Congressman Dr. Underwood is in the building and making his way up, and we are right up on the top of the hour just in time. It is 11 a.m. right now on a beautiful Monday morning. You're listening to Challenge the Status Quo on Wave 105.1 FM. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Herbash. The Trump administration is preparing to deploy up to 5,000 additional sailors and Marines to the Middle East as the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran intensifies. President Trump indicating Iran is ready to blink, but CBS's Willie James Inman reports.
Sunday's Face the Nation, Iran's foreign minister countered the president's comments, insisting there are no negotiation talks in the works.
No, we never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never asked even for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes.
Iran has a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz and oil shipments through it. Gas prices are soaring. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright insisting on NBC.
It is a short-term disruption in the flow of energy. Americans are feeling it right now. Americans will feel it for a few more weeks. But at the end, we will have removed the greatest risk to global energy supplies.
In parts of the plains, the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. The snowplows are out in force. Over a foot of snow fell in parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin today, where road conditions are treacherous. FlightAware reports more than 600 flights in and out of Minneapolis were canceled today. Dozens more through Detroit were scrapped. As Miami Beach prepares to welcome visitors for spring break, they're easing some rules put in place after violence in years past. Nikia Carrero reports.
While the city is taking a different approach from the past couple of years, there are still some rules to know about, like residential areas closed off to tourists, DUI checkpoints, and security checkpoints at beach entrances. Also, law enforcement officers from all over the county have been brought in to assist.
Another reason to take your vitamins.
A daily multivitamin could delay biological aging, with the greatest benefits found among those who are older. That according to research at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Mass General Brigham, involving 21,000 participants.
Improvements translated to about 4 months in improvement in biological aging relative to those taking a placebo.
Researcher Dr. Howard Sesso says another benefit is improvement to short-term health.
The multivitamin tested has improved cognition across multiple studies, reductions in lung cancer.
Stephen Kaufman, CBS News.
In Boston today, the city's St. Patrick's Day parade celebrating both Irish heritage and the 1776 British departure from Boston 250 years ago. At the Academy Awards, Amy Madigan has won for Best Supporting Actress. This is CBS News.
Every Sunday, moderator Margaret Brennan goes face-to-face with top leaders to make you better informed. Face the Nation, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
If you're drowning in IRS debt and can't afford to pay, then you need to take advantage of special IRS tax programs that are available and free yourself from IRS collection efforts once and for all. Due to the financial hardship consumers are facing throughout the country, the Internal Revenue Service has made it easier to settle delinquent tax problems. An open phone line has been established by Community Tax for consumers to call and see if they qualify. Take down this number or store it in your cell phone, but call the Community Tax Helpline at 800-793-9858. If you owe back taxes to the IRS and cannot afford to pay them back, or even if you have years of unfiled tax returns, there's no need to fear anymore. But you have to call the Community Tax Helpline today at 800-793-9858 for the help that you need. Don't take on the IRS alone. They can attack your wages, savings, pension, home, and even your Social Security check. Call 800-793-9858 for your free consultation and to see if you qualify. That's 800-793-9858.
A surprising adult drug is showing promise in kids.
The little blue pill many men use to help in the bedroom could help children with a rare deadly disease. Researchers in Brazil found the active ingredient in Viagra showed promising results in patients with Leigh syndrome, a genetic disorder that damages the brain and muscles and often proves fatal in early childhood. While the clinical trial was small, it showed patients saw improved movement and fewer seizures. Scientists say larger trials are needed to confirm the results. Stacey Lynn, CBS News.
How do falling cats land on their feet? Researchers at Yamaguchi University found the upper part of a cat's spine is extremely flexible, while the lower part is heavier. This suggests cats can quickly turn the upper part of their torso to face the ground and the rest of their body follows, according to the New York Times. Cats twist their spines like humans twist their necks. Heather Bosch, CBS News.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Heather Bosch. The Trump administration's preparing to deploy up to 5,000 additional sailors and Marines to the Middle East as the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran intensifies. President Trump indicating Iran is ready to blink, but CBS's Willie James Inman reports.
Sunday's Face the Nation, Iran's foreign minister countered the president's comments, insisting there are no negotiation talks in the works.
No, we never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never asked even for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes.
Iran has a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz and oil shipments through it. Gas prices are soaring. U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright insisting on NBC.
It is a short-term disruption in the flow of energy. Americans are feeling it right now. Americans will feel it for a few more weeks. But at the end, we will have removed the greatest risk to global energy supplies.
In parts of the plains, the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. The snowplows are out in force. Over a foot of snow fell in parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin today, where road conditions are treacherous. FlightAware reports more than 600 flights in and out of Minneapolis were canceled today. Dozens more through Detroit were scrapped. As Miami Beach prepares to welcome visitors for spring break, they're easing some rules put in place after violence in years past. Nikia Carrero reports.
While the city has taken a different approach from the past couple of years, there are still some rules to know about, like residential areas closed off to tourists, DUI checkpoints, and security checkpoints at beach entrances. Also, law enforcement officers from all over the county have been brought in to assist.
Another reason to take your vitamins.
A daily multivitamin could delay biological aging, with the greatest benefits found among those who are older. That according to research at Brigham and Women's Hospital and Mass General Brigham, involving 21,000 participants.
Improvements translated to about 4 months in improvement in biological aging relative to those taking a placebo.
Researcher Dr. Howard Sesso says another benefit is improvement to short-term health.
The multivitamin tested has improved cognition across multiple studies, reductions in lung cancer.
Stephen Kaufman, CBS News.
In Boston today, the city's St. Patrick's Day Parade celebrating both Irish heritage and the 1776 British departure from Boston 250 years ago. At the Academy Awards, Amy Madigan has won for Best Supporting Actress. This is CBS News.
KGUM-FM, Dedido, the talk of Guam. This is Wave 105.1 FM, a Glimpses Media radio station.
Abisu para imanmamayla na henerasyon. Hinasu ginini komisyon ifinot samoro, ekungok si Dr. Laura M. Torres Sauter, in entrevista as Maria Dueñas Concepcion.
Por favor, edzu tutuhon niya, edzu ifinakpo niya. Fanfinot samoro. Maski siya manlalatsiham zu dididi. Sigiha umusa. Sa buentas ta uusa ifinota. Tita fan moktus zan i manyanata. 150 generasyon esta mapasa ifinota para hita pa ako tagoguti. Tadisidi pa ako entre hita, haftaimano para natana siguro na umakontinua mo na.
Calling all engaged couples and event planners. Join Leo Palace Resort Guam for our first ever bridal and event expo, The Road to I Do. Happening March 21st from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Zafiro Ballroom. Explore venue options, financial planning, bridal glam, formal wear, wellness, entertainment services, and more, all in one place. The Road to I Do at Leo Palace Resort Guam. Design your day, define your forever. Special thanks to Power 98, Wave 105, and Route 99.
Got friends who still haven't switched to GTA? Now's the time to give them a nudge, because you can get up to $150 just for sending them our way. Refer a friend who signs up for a single service like wireless or internet, and you'll score $100. And if they go for a choice bundle, that's a cool $150 in your pocket. It's simple, it's sweet, and it pays to share. Visit GTA.net to start referring today. GTA, we start with you. Terms and conditions apply. Visit GTA.net for more information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the show hosts, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the staff or management of Wave 105.1 FM, Glimpses Media, or our partners. We strive to provide quality, respectful, and engaging content, and we welcome you to participate in the conversation. Thank you for tuning in to Wave 105.1 FM. Enjoy the show.
Stay sharp, stay curious, stay connected. Wave 105, the talk of Guam. Glimpses Media.
Pud idiretso itaw-taw-tano. Hinasu ginini komisyon ifinot samoro. Ekungok si Señora Hope Cristobal. In entrevista as Dr. Laura M. Torres Sauter. Mohafamon sinya tatso wigwini para tana mas claro na gof importante.
Pago na tempo no migay niya tau-tau hizong ki tau-tau tagwini. Dyan migay niya idiretso niya matsunik. Ti makomprendis ti na diretso usasangan idiretso samoro. Nisisita ta eduka tau-tau tapot no sa ano gagaya gizahita zementas kilala lahayet. Masya uno ha na samoro sebla.
Tia Trasasao, Senior Hat.
Calling all engaged couples and event planners. Join Leo Palace Resort Guam for our first ever bridal and event expo, The Road to I Do. happening March 21st from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Zafiro Ballroom. Explore venue options, financial planning, bridal glam, formal wear, wellness, entertainment services, and more, all in one place. The road to I Do at Leo Palace Resort, Guam. Design your day, define your forever. Special thanks to Power 98, Wave 105, and Route 99.
GUAM Island in the sun, from Jigo to Molessi, this land is all that we know.
Celebrate Mes Chamorro with us on Power 98 and the Guam Guide. We invite you to show your island pride in the Mes Chamorro Landmark Photo Challenge. From the Lottie Stone Park to Two Lovers Point, from the Inalaham Pools to the Malesu Bell Tower, we want to see you at your favorite Guam landmark. It's simple. Take a photo, upload your picture, and tag us on Instagram. The photo with the most likes wins. Special thanks to Vince Jewelers, Tony Romas, Local Jerk, and Fisheye Marine Park, Guam. See the GuamGuide.com/Mes Chamorro contest for all your official rules and regulations. Viva Mes Chamorro!
I said this land is all that we know.
Half a day. Welcome to the Challenge the Status Quo, and brought to you by Burger King. Just in time for Lent, BK's Big Fish Sandwich, and Impossible Whopper. 100% Whopper and 100% beef. Now at your favorite Burger King. Now let's get back into the show.
All right, Hafaday, and welcome back to Challenge the Status Quo. If you're just tuning in, my name is Melvin Juan Pat Borja. I am the Executive Director of the Commission on Decolonization. And this show is brought to you by COD and our friends over at Glimpses, also our sponsor BK. And as promised, I'm excited to welcome former Congressman Dr. Robert Underwood, who is in studio with us this morning. Hafaday, Dr. Underwood, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You know, it is always a pleasure, and I gotta admit to our listening audience that we didn't really have like a hard plan on what I wanted to discuss with former Congressman Underwood, but it is always a pleasure to have you in studio. I think that we all learn a lot when we're able to hear you in a dialogue, in a discussion, and I recognize that we're not going to cover everything that I want to talk about today in this last hour. We're going to do our best. When we first extended the invitation to Dr. Underwood, we really were just kind of brainstorming about some of the things that are happening globally, with some of the things that the United States is involved in, and there seems to be this kind of disassociation in our community about what's happening, say, in Iran or Venezuela, and how that impacts us here in Guam. I don't think that this is lost on everybody, but it, you know, for example, the conflict in Iran and Venezuela, a lot more people started to pay attention to it and start talking about it in the context of Guam when they felt the gas prices rise. And that's, you know, it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. But there are a lot of implications, I think, for our reality as a territory in almost everything and anything that the United States decides to take on. And in this case, you know, there's clear international activity that is being spearheaded by the Trump administration that is impacting us in a number of different ways. And so I thought it would be a cool thing to do, to have just a casual discussion on, you know, some of the things that are happening at an international level that the United States is involved in, and where you see these impacts fitting into our realities, and how these things could potentially be different if Guam was to attain a sovereign status.
Well, that's very long.
Very loaded.
Very long and very loaded. But let me, it's normal, of course, and it's expected that people respond to it in what affects them immediately. And in our case, it's gas prices. Right. And I have to say that gas prices are going faster here than they are in the U.S. So I'm wondering, there must be something going on in that dynamic as well. So I'm not sure what it is, but there's that. So, you know, just as a person trying to get on with their lives, But at a larger level, at a strategic level, you kind of have to figure out what does this mean for how the U.S. Establishes their presence in this part of the world. What does it mean for all the plans that they've been talking about for, over a decade, right, which now are kind of changing dramatically, and then to consider as the underlying element to that, what is the Trump administration trying to do? Right. And that's not clear at all. It's apparently not clear to very many people. He's engaged in a series of attacks in which they say they've obliterated Iran now, I think about 6 times. Right. I don't know how many times you can obliterate and destroy someone in the greatest destruction in human history, right, and yet there's nothing going on other than it's continuing. So that the essence of that is that some people think, well, strategically, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're diverting attention from this part of the world? And what about the military plans and all those things? Now, they've sent a Marine Corps expeditionary force to that part. Most of that forces comes from Okinawa, which those Marines were supposed to move here to Camp Blas, right, and they were supposed to have like 5,000. So we went through this $8 billion exercise to build Camp Blas, right, in which cultural and environmental assets were destroyed. Right. And at the end of the day, there's, I think, at least Stars and Stripes reports that there's only 150 Marines there. Right. And so what is that? How does the island react to that kind of erratic behavior? And who's making these decisions, and why aren't we not only not involved in them, why aren't we even being informed about them, and what are our elected leadership doing? So that at that level, there's a lot of things going on. All the kind of weapons that are being used. I'm sure they're using the stockpile that's here, right, up at Anderson and other places, Naval Mag maybe, and they're moving those assets to that part of the world. But at the end of the day, that doesn't mean that the President Trump can all of a sudden throw his attention back this way and put us into the soup and put us into a different sense. And the two things that are coming up should kind of alert us to that. One is the meeting with Prime Minister Takaichi this week, mm-hmm, and then the planned visit from Trump to visit President Xi in China, which, some people say is up in the air now, right, because of the conflict. So what does this mean to us? Well, it means that we're being jerked around. That's what it means. Actually, we're being jerked around at the gas pump, right, but we're also being jerked around just as an island entity. Right. Always the last to know. Always you're at the tail end of the whole process. Right. And yet, at other times, you're part of the American homeland. You're an integral part of the second island chain. Yeah. You're the major node. You're the tip of the spear. You're all these things. Right. But then when decision-making and information dissemination comes around, we're just sort of kind of guessing, and
we're the
left
afterthought.
You're the afterthought. So, of course, it's easy to bemoan that, but the reality is that we have to keep the pressure on getting information. Right. And of course, there is no vehicle through which we can, except through, Delegate Moylan sits on Armed Services. Right. He could be asking those questions. He could be submitting them for the record. He could be going down on the floor and saying, what the hell's going on and what are you doing in Guam? He could do those things. Right. But he's not. So
I think that's unfortunate because now, I think we've always understood the value of a strong and strategic voice, aggressive voice in Congress, and not without kind of being ignorant or naive about the limitations of being a non-voting delegate. This is one of the reasons why I always like having you in here, because I'm no longer speculating and I can just ask you about your experience in that position. I definitely am one of those that I'm dissatisfied with the level of engagement and the activity coming from our delegate. And I think I agree with you that there are a number of ways that that delegate seat can be leveraged to alleviate some of these questions and concerns that we have as a community.
Absolutely. He can go to the floor. He can go to the floor tomorrow and give a 1 minute.
Right.
And then there'll be people in Washington, D.C. who will be they have to listen.
Yeah,
Their
right.
job to listen and to monitor,
Right.
and then they'll respond. He could be making those inquiries to the chairman of Armed Services or whatever subcommittees he's on.
Right.
He could be making those inquiries, but maybe he is, but I haven't seen any evidence of that. And as always, it's like our attention is diverted to other activities
Right.
that he's engaged in.
Right.
But it's always important, I think, for people to, when they go to the gas pump or they see the sudden rise in prices in food, is to understand why is this what is this disruption about? And is this the same kind of disruption that they're feeling in California or Hawaii? Or is this a special kind of disruption
right.
for us? Are we being disrupted even more? Are we more vulnerable? And what is the source of that? See, that's the kind of, and so, on the margins, obviously elected officials will say that they can ameliorate on the margins,
Right.
but in reality, I don't know that they're actually getting at the nub of the problem. And the nub of the problem is our relationship with the federal government.
I mean, I agree with that 100%. And I think that historically, the people of Guam, the voters in Guam, have valued our delegates' participation in the Armed Services Committee for a reason. I feel like historically it has been strategically leveraged for precisely things like this. How do we eliminate the information vacuum? How do we ensure that we are more aware of what's happening so that we can prepare it? And I feel like that was never it was never a coincidence or an accident. I feel like our leadership has always looked at it as we recognize that we are at a clear disadvantage as a territory. There's certain information that we will just get late, or that because we're not involved in decision making, we're learning things after the fact. But I also believe that we've seen certain delegates perform at a really high level because they were strategic and aggressive and very deliberate about how to use their participation in the Armed Services Committee to our advantage.
Absolutely, it's Armed Services membership is the key to this,
Right.
and always kind of pushing the envelope. And you can see some of that, historically, where, but what you don't want to end up being in a situation where your representative on the Armed Services says, the military says, trust us, and your representative says, yeah, I trust them, or trust me, don't worry about it, be happy, that kind of thing, because there's some serious issues here.
I agree.
And the effects of changes to this has a direct effect on our lives and our vulnerability. So now all this conversation about the second island chain, the discussion about deep seabed mining,
Right.
and now Japan is kind of engaging with the U.S. on some deep seabed mining
Right.
on islands that are closer to Tokyo, closer. But we're in the kind of like the direct island chain,
Right.
You have to look at the geography. It comes almost straight south to us. So all of those things have a connection,
Right.
and we're reliant on having a community as well as leaders that are strategic in their vision, that understand the connections, so they can make those connections work for us, instead of feeling like we're just vulnerable to that. And that's what I think people act like. They go to the gas pump and then they want to attack Exxon. Okay,
Right.
so. Okay, I get that part,
Right.
but there's something more fundamental in that. It always strikes me as odd, especially when it comes to oil prices. That's a commodity that's set that responds to international trends.
Right.
So even if the U.S. had sufficient oil production and they could, They were formerly charging $60 a barrel, and now they're up to $100 a barrel worldwide. You think a U.S. oil company is going to say, no, we're going to stay at 60?
Right.
You know, they're not, because it's a worldwide commodity.
Right.
So the idea that you're energy independent somehow insulates you from the rise and fall of oil prices is almost delusional.
Right.
Yet we have people talking that way and arguing that way, and then on the margins, you know, what is going to happen if we do get a Jones Act exemption?
Right.
And so if we get a Jones Act exemption, what does that mean for oil prices? Does that mean that we're going to get our oil products now from the States on foreign vessels? We already get it from Asia on foreign vessels. So I don't know what the price break is on that. I'm not sure I understand it.
Right.
And of course, we should get exempted from the Jones Act. But
Absolutely.
But that targeting it for the relationship to oil makes me suspicious.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I think somebody is going to make a deal out of that.
Absolutely.
And you know, and the whole thing about the Maritime Administration, the whole structure of the Jones Act is to protect the American merchant marine, and apparently nobody cares about that anymore.
Yeah, apparently. I mean,
and not even Trump.
Yeah, I mean, the Jones Act really was built to protect American jobs at a time when they were getting outgunned by international shipping companies. And you know, it's been arbitrarily, well, maybe not, I shouldn't say, it's been deliberately targeted for territories, or, you know, built to be, to impose upon territories.
Well, and it hurts us the most.
Right.
And so it's interesting, like, so you make the comparison. The Northern Marianas is exempted from the Jones Act, but they have to get everything
through Guam
from
anyway.
Guam.
Right,
So
right.
what difference does that make for them? Same thing with the Virgin Islands is
Right.
exempted from the Jones Act, but everything they get comes through Puerto Rico, which is not exempted.
Right.
So there are kind of elements to that people have to pay attention to.
Right.
Kind of get ourselves smart on that,
Yeah.
and not respond to, you know, flash in the pan ideas that are on the margin that make you
Right.
feel like, you know, I'm going to give you a price break at the.
Right,
I don't know what the Guam legislature could do that would give us a price break at the pump. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the Guam legislature and the governor together
Right.
could do to make that difference.
Well, maybe if they got the AG and he did a billboard. Maybe if the AG made a really offensive billboard, that would do the trick.
Yeah.
You know, I agree. I think that I think a lot of us get caught up on the Jones Act, and I kind of look at the Jones Act in the same way or similar way that I look at the insular cases. You know, there have been multiple efforts to abolish the insular cases. And I look at that in the same way that I look at the authorization of a Guam constitution. These are all great things in and of themselves. I don't think anybody is against abolishing the insular cases or abolishing the Jones Act or writing a Guam constitution. But I think there are also a lot of people who kind of, you know, see through the facade and understand that these are things that are helpful, but they don't solve the core of the issue or the challenge or the you know, I guess the inequity of our situation.
That's right, and of course the inequity of our situation has as its basis, you know, the era of colonialism, and I can't help but think that as we are trying to repatriate the remains of our ancestors, why aren't we exerting the same level for repatriating a political right?
Right.
Because that's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what it is.
I agree.
It's a form of justice, restoration, repatriation.
Right.
And yet everybody can get on board with repatriating the remains.
Right.
How about repatriating
our rights?
Our rights. Let's
Our
try that.
sovereignty. Yeah.
Let's try that. Let's see who shows up for that ceremony.
Well, amen to that. And I agree with that 100%. I mean, in some ways, I often feel like while I simultaneously celebrate these moments where we're repatriating remains or artifacts, that in the back of my mind, I'm thinking the same thing, that this is a great victory, but we still are not sovereign, and we still are in a position where, our rights are being trampled on regularly. And in these pocket moments, nobody wants to be the guy who's like, oh no, we should not be respectful of human remains. And everybody is, it's a safe subject.
That's
nobody
right.
nobody gets upset or bent out of shape about repatriating human remains. But there's obviously still debate on whether Chamorro people should have equal rights or not. Because if there was no debate, we wouldn't be arguing over it.
That's right. And it's important to understand that the reason why we're repatriating is because colonialism allowed them to take it out.
Right.
I mean, the source of this, the source of this is the colonial experience.
Right.
Why can't we teach a lesson from that? All right, we have the remains here. You know why people took these remains out? Because they could.
Right.
Because there was no restraint on them, because our ancestors lost their capacity, their ability to resist. They lost their sovereignty. So as we go through the process of bringing back the remains and bringing back the artifacts, we should remember that the source of that, the source of that discomfort ultimately continues in its political form.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And, I got to admit that my circumstance of playing both the Commission on Decolonization role and Department of Chamorro Affairs role, I have taken full advantage of it as much as I possibly can. So, we often make sure that we are doing the work of the Commission on Decolonization, even at these museum functions. So it was awesome. We had the ceremony. There was easily over 100 some people that attended. One of the groups that has been circulating the pledge to support Chamorro self-determination was out there and collecting signatures. And it's always refreshing to me when we're doing these types of ceremonies, which are obviously very somber and very solemn gatherings, but that we're not forgetting about our political rights. We're not forgetting about our struggle for decolonization and sovereignty. I'm often encouraged when I talk to people who come out to these ceremonies, and they are folks who want to continue the conversation on decolonization. They're the folks who can connect these dots very clearly. And I think that's, it's a great way to bring others into the discussion. I think you're right that a lot of people they're less hesitant to come to a repatriation ceremony than a decolonization demonstration or a Finogi march.
Yeah.
But, I think that we've also shown that there are a lot of people who are willing to kind of put it all on the line, stick their neck out in the defense of Chamorro self-determination. And I think we saw that at the public hearing for Bill 242. There was a significant number of non-Chamorro people who came out in support of Chamorro self-determination.
I always felt that if we just declared that we were having an election for Chamorro self-determination and this is for the Chamorro people,
right.
I just doubt that more than 100 non-Chamorros would show up. I think there's a kind of like, they all know that. If you've been here a while, you know that these people have been messed up.
Yeah.
and
hard not to know.
So it's hard not to know. And because you're always saying it, it's like the repatriation, the taking out of assets and cultural resources was as a result of colonialism.
Right.
But now we're all suffering from colonial amnesia. It's like, okay, we remember it for this purpose, but we're not going to remember it for this purpose.
Right.
So we have a kind of a colonial amnesia going on. So, your strategic use of those ceremonies and those realities to bring attention, not just to the artifacts and the remains themselves, but the broader story behind it. And so, when you can, it's like I was listening to Miguel talk about Hornbostel and how he took all these things, he sent them to the Bishop Museum. Why? Because he could, because he had the authority. And who the hell gave him the authority? Well, he just took it upon himself and, the naval government and all that, and nobody could resist it.
Right.
And so I'm not dumping on Hornbostel, but I'm just saying that's the construct that made all of this possible.
Right,
So as we're repatriating and as we're honoring and as we're remembering, we have to remember the system that made all of that possible.
I agree, and it's always exciting when other people are kind of catching wind or coming into the discussion for the first time, even if it's through this means. I was really encouraged to see all the kids from the immersion school come out for the Lati ceremony. And it was great because obviously our elders who came, for a lot of them it was kind of a moment of closure. And, there are folks that were there at our ceremony who were directly involved in the repatriation of the human remains that came back in 2000 from the Hornbostel collection, and who are aware of these Lati. Miguel always used to joke that there was this there's like this myth, the lore of the Lati in Hawaii, that so many Chamorros who lived in Hawaii, either they knew the Lati were there and they've seen them, or there's another group that they knew of the Lati, but they've never actually seen them. And so there's this mystery, right? Like, are there actually Lati there or not? And even after we, determined, yes, there are Lati, we figured out where they were, we made the agreement to return them. A lot of Chamorros who lived in Hawaii kind of had some separation anxiety for a moment there. Like, do you really, now that they're here out on display again, we want to see them. We want to be able to connect with them. And I think that some of them were kind of sad to see them leave. But, I feel like those moments are necessary, because sometimes we just need an excuse to kind of stick our face in the discussion. We need an excuse to learn more, or something to pique our interest. And it's awesome to see how have been a number of individuals who have started to engage around these repatriation activities, and now they are extremely active on the deep sea mining conversation, on the militarization conversation, on the political status conversation, which is, I think, very encouraging.
Well, I'm really encouraged, because it's not just the number of people that came out, but the depth of thought,
Yes.
the depth of analysis. People weren't just screaming and hollering and holding up signs. They were doing more than that.
Right.
They were analyzing, they were criticizing, and that all of this discussion. So to some extent, I want to thank Senator Parkinson for allowing that to manifest itself, because it did. And I felt so heartened by it.
I did too.
It's the same thing in the conversation over the programmatic agreement. I gave testimony, and then I sat there in awe, and then I was listening to these young people, and I'm saying, man, these guys got it.
Yep.
They know what they're talking about, and they know where they're going. So that is now how does that manifest itself in further movements and policies and voting? All of these things have yet to be resolved, but it takes leadership, and it also takes good followership. And I always like to quote my departed friend Ron Rivera, and he was such for the time that we worked together, he functioned as my conscience. So, when you talked about the time when I was delegate, when you're delegate, people are coming to you from all different sides, and you want to go this way and you want to go that way. And he functioned as my conscience. He would call me up saying, well, you don't really want to do that, do you? And so, but he always said, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. Right. And so there's that element, there's that kind of thing that is manifesting itself. So we'll see how the political leadership now responds to that.
Right.
But they must respond to it.
I agree. I mean, and I think that, that era of community engagement, community leadership, I think has really set the tone for what we do now. There's a lot of, I get the kind of regular criticism, why why is the Commission on Decolonization engaging with the United Nations? You should be engaging with Congress. Congress is the only one that can fix it. That's Ken Leongro's favorite criticism of us. Like, Congress is the only one that can do this. And my response is always very simple. Well, unfortunately, I'm not your delegate in Congress. And there's somebody whose job that is to engage with Congress. But, for me, first of all, if we have an opportunity to engage with the United Nations, I think it behooves us to do so. And that's the whole reason why we're there. The premise is that, we engage with the Committee of 24, the C24, and that's their particular mandate is on non-self-governing territories, addressing colonialism internationally, and allowing for these territories to have a fair and open process to self-determine and elevate themselves to a sovereign political status. And so, in that scenario, if we don't take up the UN on their invitation to engage, then their default is to receive information and reports on Guam from our administering power, which is the U.S. And the U.S. has regularly tried to remind the UN that Guam is self-governing and shouldn't be on the list, even though they're the ones who put us on the list to begin with. Yeah. But when I think about that, the context of that work, not only do I think that it's just the intelligent thing for us to do to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, but in a lot of ways, I look at it on a personal level as this is my way to honor those who came before me, like yourself and Ron Rivera and the members of OPIR that really paved the way for us at the United Nations. I remember leading up to the, I'm about to out Leland right now, but when we were leading up to the hearing for Parkinson's Bill 242, I ran into Leland Bettis, who, as you know, your colleague at the PCIS, and was also, for those of you who are unaware, he was the former executive director of the Commission on Decolonization, the Commission on Self-Determination. And I remember running into him, and we were just kind of talking about the public hearing, and he says to me, I'm not really sure if I'm going to go. And I said, why not? And he said, I don't know. Do you think I should go? And I said, yeah, you should absolutely go. And he goes, well, I'm not a voter. I wouldn't, I'm not a native inhabitant. I'm not going to vote anyway. But I support this, but I don't think it's my place. And I said, why wouldn't it be your place? I think it's important that, we have a diverse range of voices. And he says, well, if I was to go, I think I would only go and talk about my friend Ron Rivera. And I said, well, I think that's a fantastic reason to go, because Ron Rivera is an extremely critical voice in this conversation, and he's not here to, make his voice be heard. And so, I really appreciated and respected the way that Leland decided that he was going to testify against this bill. And that was his entire frame of reference. He said, if Ron Rivera was here, let me tell you what Ron would say. He would ask, are these people colonized? If they are, then it means they have a right to decolonize. And I thought it was awesome that, it was not just Leland. There are a number of people who brought with them others who have been involved in this struggle and are no longer here with us. And for me, just as a human being, I felt emotional in the beginning of that hearing because my default is to take attendance. I always take attendance when we show up. And for me, it was less about who was there, but more about who was not there. There are so many people that have helped to raise me, teach me, inform me that I would normally expect to, wouldn't miss that hearing for their lives, but they're not here anymore. And so, it was necessary, I felt, that, other people represent those perspectives and those voices. And I got to say that our community responded in grand fashion.
They did. And, the UN, they always try to make a distinction. Are you following the UN route or the congressional route? Right. I said, no, I'm going to follow every route I can. Yes. and this is this. Right. If I don't take this road, someone else is going to take it. And right now the U.S. is filling that void. But, just in retrospect, like remembering going back to that time frame, so many people. I mean, the voice and the charisma of Angel Santos. Yes. And so sometimes people think that there are all kinds of different things going on. But I said, no, Angel had like just a particular role, and he had a kind of an ethos, a presence to him that has made an enormous difference in our lives and how we see ourselves, how we envision ourselves, how we dress. I mean, nobody, to some extent people say, well, you were an intellectual leader. I said, yeah, I was an intellectual leader, but nobody went around saying, I want to dress like Robert Underwood. But Angel, the way he carried himself, and, people wanted to emulate him, and he was that kind of trendsetter and that kind of consciousness raising person. And there were people always one of the things that I like to mention going back to that time frame was that we tried to get the when we first went to the UN, we tried to get the senators to support us, and they wouldn't.
Right.
so
surprised.
They were kind of hiding and kind of like telling me different things. And then, but we had two people came to the fore and said, okay, we're going to try to get the commissioners. And so these two people were Marie Pablo, who later became a Carmelite nun, and Nerissa. And so those two became responsible for securing the petition. And that was submitted to the UN, and they got every commissioner except one.
Wow.
So that was, everybody makes a contribution, everybody, and there's room enough. The issue is large enough. The issue is big enough and important enough for everybody to participate.
I agree.
So no matter how minor you think or how illegitimate or how off center you are, get involved, because this is the single most important thing in our political life is the quest for decolonization and self-determination.
Wow, I agree wholeheartedly. And I think your comment on how large the issue is and how there's a place for everybody, it really resonates with me. It reminds me, I attended a lecture several years back. It was hosted by Fuetz and Famalawan, but they brought out some leaders it was a women's conference, and there was one women from USVI, American Samoa, and Puerto Rico. And the woman who came from Puerto Rico, I unfortunately can't remember her name, but I'll never forget, somebody after the panel, somebody had asked a question, how do I get involved, or how do I contribute? And I don't know I don't know how to contribute. And she said something like, everybody wants to be Martin Luther King Jr., but there can only be one Martin Luther King Jr., and you don't want 100 Martin Luther King Jr.'s anyway, because then it devalues what that person's contribution is. And so she says, but just because you don't have the skill set of Martin Luther King Jr. doesn't mean that you can't contribute. And everybody can contribute in some way. And it's such a huge thing that we need everyone's contribution. She
Absolutely.
says, maybe you think that your only viable skill is making sandwiches. And she goes, and that might seem minuscule to you, but you have to remember that even Martin Luther King Jr. got to eat. And all the people who are working got to eat, and it may seem minuscule, but it's important. If we're not fed, then how do we do the work? And so she's like, the point I'm trying to make is that whatever you can contribute is welcome. The question is, are you willing to contribute?
Yeah.
And are you willing to contribute what it is that is of value, to you, and how do we create that value in the movement? And I was really moved by that, because I felt like that too, as a young person looking up to all of our leaders in the community and in policy. I always kind of felt like, I'm not at that level. So what do I do? And I felt like
you did slam poetry.
Yeah, that was for me. That was
great.
what it was. I just had to find my pocket, to find my little niche, something that I felt like I did well. And how does that, how do I use that to contribute? And thanks for bringing it up and giving me a chance to talk about it. At that time, there was a bunch of us who were organizing. We were with a group called We Are Guahan back then, and our whole goal was just to present information to our community about what the federal government was saying would be the potential impacts of this military buildup. Because at that time, the only information we were getting in the community was this is going to bring in a whole lot of jobs, and this is going to be great for the economy, and we should all support this, and national defense. So, yay. But there was really no critical perspective on what would be some of these adverse impacts. What was the experience of Okinawan people when Futenma Air Base was at its peak? So we knew that there was a lot to be critical of in regard to the potential buildup impacts, but we just felt like that information wasn't getting out. So we started first by engaging at the town hall meetings. They had these huge town halls. They had 4 really large ones, one at Southern High School. Ironically, they started at Southern High, which I thought was their first mistake. You came to my home court.
Yeah.
So they did Southern High School. They did UOG, Okadu, and then I think they did one at like the Jigo Senior Center or something like that. But what we did is every town hall meeting, we gathered a bunch of people to read the EIS, to farm information out of the EIS, and then we like hand wrote them on poster boards so that people could see what their environmental assessment was proposing and have a better idea of what they should be concerned about. And then what we did is we went and we started to engage people to write comments. But one of the things that I really liked was that at that time they were allowing oral testimony to be given, but they limited oral testimony to 3 minutes. And so I'll never forget the first town hall meeting I attended. It was one that was organized by the former delegate, Madeline Berdayu. Madeline Berdayu, along with the rep from the USVI and the rep from American Samoa. And so I remember watching that hearing. I just went because my mom made me go. She was in the legislature at the time. And I remember watching it and watching so many of our elders, elder after elder, kind of getting ushered off of stage. They just finished telling you who they are, who their family is, why they have a right to tell you what they want to tell you. And before they even get into the meat of their comment,
time's up.
Yeah, sorry, sir, time is up. So they had one of our, I won't mention the name, but they hired one of our local residents to like be the timekeeper and like shoo them off of stage and bring the next person on. And so I was really frustrated because you could see our elders visibly frustrated that they were being cut off and not being allowed to say what they needed to say. And so it just kind of hit me like, wow, they're really going hard on this 3-minute time limit. And so, how do we do something about this? And I started thinking to myself, like, we're training all of these poets to compete in poetry slams, and the rules for poetry slams, time limit is 3 minutes.
There you go.
And so I said, why not just get the information to these kids, have them write poems, and then I'll give them extra credit to show up at a hearing. And when we did that, oh man, we flooded the testimony. Like, testimony after testimony was articulate, was fact-based, and was under 3 minutes, and they couldn't cut the mic off until they finished saying what they had to say. And now, fast forward to 2026, whenever the military does these public town halls and engagements, they don't allow public or oral testimony anymore. Only written testimony. And
and they're not really meetings.
Yeah, they're not.
They're not station to station.
Yeah, right. Which is their format was almost identical back then. This was back in, I want to say, maybe 2011 or 2010. The only difference in their format back then was that they had a section carved out where they would hear from anybody who wanted to testify orally. But I think they figured out that we were ready to hijack that space.
Yeah, right.
And it was, what was awesome. I also thought about how earlier you mentioned how, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. At that time, it was just a bunch of us activists on the mic and a bunch of the, teenage poets. But after the first town hall meeting and that, all of that media coverage came out, slowly but surely, all the elected officials started to show up and testify at these hearings. And, of course, the one that was really leading the charge was the late Senator Ben Pangilinan, who was, extremely vocal and brought a lot of other attention from the other senators to participate as well, which is really exciting. You know, I think that when our community leaders and our elected officials are shoulder to shoulder, it really changes the whole dynamic of the engagement.
Well, I think there are lessons for that on almost any kind of issue, but on this most fundamental one, clearly, you touch a nerve. So, each generation is commanded to do something, so they have to participate. So I'm really heartened by the level of analysis, the level of creativity, the verve, the ambience, the feeling that is so strong and stronger even, and then going back and remembering what you did and young poets. I mean, everybody has had a hand in this.
Right.
So there's nobody who can lay claim to it. And there should, because the issue is larger than any individual personality or individual person. So we're all in it together.
Yep.
And, so that should listen up. When we first started talking about Chamorro self-determination, we used to hear, well, I love Guam. Why can't I participate? Right. And I remember there were two professors from UOG, Stan Malkin and George Boughton, who were big supporters of Chamorro self-determination. Right. And they said, well, you can love Guam within a half hour of getting here, but that doesn't mean anything. Loving it is not the same as having the right to, because you're not a participant. You weren't the ones that were colonized.
Right.
And so that continues to, resonate. Even though it doesn't seem like it, it will continue to resonate. And I believe that most people are, of goodwill, ultimately, if they think about it. Obviously there's some that are, I see them on blogs. I don't know who the hell these people are.
They call me regularly here.
Yeah, so, but, I always think, wow, if that guy doesn't really like what I'm saying, I must be saying the right thing.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I mean, I felt like a lot of that was manifested at the hearing as well. There are a number of, I always joke that I'm tired of the race card being played on me, and that this is often pitched by our opposition as being a divisive issue. Yeah. But I think we saw the opposite. There are a lot of people who were galvanized by those accusations and that came out to support Chamorro self-determination who are not Chamorro. I mean, it was the Filipinos for Guahan, or Filipinos for Chamorro self-determination, they always come out very vocally and eloquently in support of our stance. But there are a number of young people that came out in opposition to the bill and in support of Chamorro self-determination, who I thought were very well-informed, very articulate, and extremely diverse. I had a few people call me and ask me, hey, who is that young Korean girl that was there with her signed Koreans for Chamorro self-determination? And I loved her testimony because it was so well-informed and it was contextual. She spoke about even the historical Korean experience, and in a number of aspects, right? The displacement of South Koreans and North Koreans, and the political division, and even their their historical colonial experience, and why that is extremely personal and relevant to her as a Korean living in Guam. Yeah. And so it was a really exciting thing to see. I was really pleased to see a bunch of unfamiliar faces, people that I've never met before, but that are willing to put their name and their face out there. And I gotta also give you credit as well and props, because everybody was raving about the teenagers who were able to get out of school so they could come down and testify. And those of you who are out there in our listening audience who may not know, those two young GW students that came out are members of the Youth for Decolonization Club at George Washington High School. And their advisor is Sophia Underwood, who is an amazing teacher. Shout out to Sophia Underwood for being not only a great teacher, but committing to playing the advisor role for this group of young people who just felt like it was their responsibility to engage on this issue and get their classmates involved. So we're really excited about the work there.
And she's always telling me, and sometimes I've talked to some of these students, and you know, they're a diverse group.
They are a very
she had
diverse
a student
group.
there from Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
I'm all for tomorrow.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, well, how does this, because the justice issue behind it is so apparent to anyone who sits down and thinks about it for 10 minutes.
Absolutely. That's all you need. 10 minutes of
10
critical
minutes
thought,
of just listening.
you're there.
You're there.
Dr. Underwood, I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us. Thanks to everyone who has been tuned in on our COD Instagram Live and the Wave YouTube and out there in Radio Land. We will be back here again next week, Monday, for another round of political status conversation. Thanks to Dr. Underwood. Thank you, Nene, for holding us down in the production booth. I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Adios.
This is CBS News on the Hour, your home for original reporting.
I'm Heather Bosch. President Trump says he is demanding that about 7 countries heavily reliant on Middle East oil join a coalition to police the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran has a stranglehold